Hello, Cindy here with Create Your Own Luck and Love. I'm excited to talk about love styles, not to be mistaken for attachment styles today. And this really, knowing your love style, not only will it have an impact on your current relationships, but how to create sorry about that. I got interrupted. How to create the kind of relationship that you desire. We all tend to have certain patterns or ways of being that we show up in relationship that have proven to feel safe or beneficial. So we learn our love style very similar to attachment style, but not to be mistaken for this. There's our love style falls into about 5 different categories, and it's influenced from our early caregivers or our parents, the way we were raised. And I'm going to dive into that today so that one, it can support you in having more knowledge on how to create stronger, more connective, healthier relationships. And this is something that I discuss with my clients in detail. And, we do a reverse engineering of sorts to support. I do it to support them in what it is they want to create and being aware of where they come from, because this can all be shifted, which is great too. So I'm going to talk first about the first category that you might see in love styles. So the first one is the pleaser, otherwise known as the people pleaser. So the signs of someone who is a pleaser in relationships, and I'm talking about interpersonal adult relationships, closer intimate relationships, sometimes friendships too. The signs of a pleaser, typically you came from a house where one or both parents were distressed, angry, critical. So the overriding effect on you from this type of parenting was that you learned to give support to the parent that was angry or distressed. So that was, and your parent may have shown up in a way where you were more their friend or you became more the parent. So, i.e. giving comfort. So signs of a people pleaser, typically very nice, well put together, as well as people pleasers tend to be very loyal. Also, what attracts a partner to a people pleaser in the beginning is that they are very loyal, and they also tend to be very giving and caring to their partners. So some of the other sides to people pleasers are they are uncomfortable with conflict. So they will avoid conflict. They don't typically like it. I don't think most people like conflict, but in particular, they tend to avoid conflict. They, which when they become upset, the tendency is to be more passive aggressive, or passive or aggressive. So they tend to not have personal boundaries because they're attempting to please everyone. So they'll put their feelings on the back burner. They don't like to say no. They come across with no opinions, no real strong views. So, what can happen there is you can get into a relationship and tend to chameleon into what the partner wants you to be. So let me know I'd be curious to know which love style you are most connected to as well. So things to be aware of if you do resonate with this love style is to start to explore who you are and what your wants, needs, and desires are. Learn how to stand in your power, set healthy boundaries, and know that it's okay, because the right people will stay with you and the wrong people will go away. The next love style, I should say, is the victim. So the victim, their primary caregivers tend to be more chaotic. They might have violence in their household or families. So the victim actually has learned to avoid attention, so fly under the radar. Now, the thing about a victim is they may build up a fantasy because they spend a lot of time in their head. Hence, they fly under the radar. They might identify themselves as more of an introvert, and they will tend to create idealizations or fantasies around what they think a relationship should be, or that's where what I call fantasy relationships can come about, which is much more common. Hey, how are you, Daniela? It's good to see you. So this being said, there's been some trauma here, and so the tendencies towards victims is they might struggle with depression or anxiety because there's a strong fight or flight within them. They're just used to being in self-protection mode in some way, shape, or form. So there's obviously different scales to this. They tend to be compliant. They tend to go with the flow. They have a hard time with personal boundaries. Even when they seem calm, they tend to be more anxious and more in their head. So they may not be as present because they're anxious. The tendency is to be more anxious and maybe not appearing high strung, but more high strung. So they will, so what's interesting about a victim is that a lot of times the partnership starts off really good. The spouse will see them as stable, calm, and what can end up happening as the two become more comfortable is there's a seemingly more emotionally immature individual, more childlike behavior, because that part wasn't developed, because they were really kind of cocooned themselves in. Low personal boundaries. Also, anger is prevalent. Even anger and annoyance towards children is prevalent, as well as the tendency to go into addiction as well. Addiction, and hence the anxiety. So something that is common and something to just be aware of, if you identify with the victim at all, and you might be thinking, well, I identify with a few of these, then listen and look at areas within which you can strengthen, right? So with the victim, focus on, creating a stronger sense of self, standing in your power, and not allowing others to take advantage of you. So that's part of the passive aggression in the victim, because quite frankly, before they could do anything, their parents or caregivers were chaotic or really angry. So the next person I'm going to talk about, the next love style, is the controller. Now, the controller is, exactly what you're hearing, controlling, right? But the signs of a controller, they had little or no attention from their main caregivers. So they might have felt invisible, not wanted, not seen. So what this creates is a being of self-sufficiency. So as a young person, they raised themselves, they took care of themselves, because that's their way to gain control and feel better. So as adults, what controllers do is they have the tendency to want to control everything around them, right? They want to control their partners. They want to control the outcome of things, because if they know, then they feel safe, right? And controlling people in general have major trust issues. They have a hard time trusting others, which can result in a lack of self-trust too. So the thing about controllers too is they will be quick to anger at times and use anger as a way of getting what they want. So they might become bullyish or become angry with somebody in order to get control over them or get what they want, and get their own needs met. So they will tend to lack empathy or compassion. So you might be going, why would I want to be with a controller? Well, many of us have controlling tendencies, right? So this is, the thing about controllers too is they might have a tendency to be more rigid in their way of being, what they expect in others. They have really high standards. They will, and they do these things too to avoid getting hurt. So it's a wall that's built up. They will rarely step out of their comfort zone. They may struggle with addiction as well because of that need to control, and that's the only thing they can utilize to escape. You might be attracted to controllers, or people are attracted to you. Hello. Because you can take charge, you can handle a lot. Controllers tend to be high achievers, high standards for themselves. So here's the downside, is partners will tend to feel criticized, abused, bullied, right? So to be, things to be aware of as a controller, or, knowing that you have those tendencies, is to learn to trust others, to, leap of faith, trust people, manage your anger. So learn where that stems from and let go of anger, and learn to let go of control, that you don't always have to be the one in control, and what that looks like for you in your life. So the next one is the vacillator. So the vacillator was raised by unpredictable parents, hence vacillating, right? So the vacillator, they were raised by caregivers that they gave them just enough to want more. It's kind of like when you're dating a guy that's breadcrumbing you. He's giving you just enough to want more. So it's kind of like you're the cat scratching on the door, right? So they are, they really learn that they are not a high priority on their parents' list. They will struggle with abandonment, struggle with oftentimes feeling alone, oftentimes not feeling understood. And they'll search for love and affection and desire and have need for that. And they'll tend to idealize love and relationships because that's the thing that they feel like if they can get that, then they can get their needs met, right? So a partner really tends to love a vacillator because they're really dedicated to the relationship. They're really romantic. They have this soulmate connection, as their tendency is to put everything into relationship. In fact, they put all their time, all their energy into relationship. And they can, as you might know it, suffocate a relationship. So they will, but they have the tendency, and this is important to know, to have really stressful relationships because they want consistency. So any change, any little bit of change in their partner or change in routine or change in anything, and well, I'll get into that later, but women can tend to do that when they're in the early stages of dating with men. But this is even stronger with someone that associates as a vacillator. They struggle with abandonment. They will struggle in relationships because they get really fearful. And what'll happen is the partner will eventually struggle with thinking, can I ever make that person happy? Can I ever make that person happy? So, so the partner will feel like they're not enough. I can't make that person happy. Hello, Elizabeth from Argentina. So the biggest thing is if you associate as a vacillator, pace yourself, especially in the beginning of getting to know someone and in a dating relationship. Don't move too fast. Take your time to get to know someone, and you may really have to slow yourself down. And when you get to know others before diving in, you start to create more realistic expectations, okay? So that is the vacillator. The next person is the avoider. And what might be coming up for you guys, if you're familiar with attachment styles, this has some similarities to your attachment styles, but these are really how you might show up in your love life and how this manifests itself, not necessarily how your attachment style shows up. Hope that makes sense. So the avoider. The avoider is exactly what you hear. They tend to avoid conflict. They don't, they tend to discourage affection unless it's more intimate connection, unless it's during sex or something. Not always. The thing about an avoider is they tend to be more performance driven. So people are attracted to avoiders because they can be really charming. They tend to be high performers. That's that is really attractive, right, to others. They tend to they tend to think more along the lines of logic rather than feelings. So they can be disconnected from their feelings. Then on top of that, they tend to not have conversations that are as in depth, or deeper conversations tend to make them uncomfortable, because that can be, a connection emotionally. And typically avoiders aren't always aware of this either. They will lack empathy. They tend to be workaholics. Avoiders can also be labeled more of a narcissistic personality, not always, but these are some of the traits. And maybe there are certain parts of you that show up as avoidant, but other parts of you that maybe show up as, a vacillator or something else, right? So if you are an avoider, the key is to become aware of that, and become aware of your tendency to be uncomfortable with feelings, with depth, and learn to ask questions to create connection, and really work on creating connection, if that's what you desire. Now, the next type is the secure connection. So the secure connection is something we all strive for, which is somebody that is able to easily give and receive love without, having these, standards of what they think a relationship should look like. Oftentimes a controller, even a people pleaser, can have these standards on what I think a relationship should look like. And if somebody doesn't check those boxes off, then they will not even entertain them. So, a vacillator too might have higher walls of who they're going to let in and who they're not going to let in. So a secure connection person is someone that is free-flowing, that is interested in people and has the ability to give and receive love without needing a lot of reassurance, they're more of a secure style, right? So without needing all kinds of reassurance, and without having an attachment to what it looks like, or having to protect themselves all the time because, gosh forbid, if I'm too friendly, someone might get the wrong idea, and then I have to have a conversation or something. So they see the strengths and weaknesses in others as they see in themselves. They really work hard on connective communication. They can interact with their partners easily without being too demanding, right? Or idealizing the way this person should be, or the way a relationship should look. Oftentimes I've heard women, and I used to be like this when I was really young, is I would watch these movies and have this romantic notion of how a relationship should be. And in reality, that's Hollywood or Disney or whatever. It's not reality. All relationships take effort, work, and have working parts that get to be worked on consistently. So if you have this outlook of You're skilled at conflict resolution. You know yourself. You can set healthy boundaries. You can shift boundaries when it's time to shift your boundaries. And it's so important to understand who you are, how you show up. Excuse me. And you might be thinking, I have multiple personalities. I show up as many of these. Well, welcome to the real world. Pick out the things that most resonate with you and look at, okay, so where can I work on myself? What can I focus on within me so that I can come to a place of being able to give and receive love freely? And what, in my experience and working with men and women for a long time now, is it's much easier for people to give than it is to receive. But if you can learn the art of receiving, you can actually learn the art of true connection and getting in touch with who you are, what you want, and your feelings. I hope this helps today. If you know somebody that needs to hear this, please, please, please share it. And if you're on IGTV, hi, Facebook, hello, I'd be curious to know, which love style do you associate with? Just put it in the comments below. I'm curious, I wanna know. I can definitely tell you that I have identified with a few of these in my life. And I'm always working on secure connection and communication. And through that is curiosity too. And if you're on YouTube and you like this, I would love it if you gave me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so that you can get my videos any old time that we post them, which is usually several times a week. And if, like I said, IGTV, any place else, yay. Good to see you guys. Have an amazing rest of your day. I know this was kind of long, but definitely important, and I hope it helped. Mwah. Lots of love.